All right, I'm at the next phase of my costume making, and here's where we are now. Just to recap again, I'm making a Mad Hatter costume for my daughter for Halloween. And in the first video, I talked about the pattern in general. In the second video, I kind of went through some of the tools a tiny bit. I'll probably go over that a little bit more later. What I've done now is I'm going to recap, describe where I am in the instructions, and then go through what I've just done. So in my pattern, I'm making the B view, which is what is the Mad Hatter costume. The A view is Captain Hook. I'm not making that. I'm making the B view. And I'm making the coat. And I'm making it in the extra small size, because that's the right size for my daughter. There's another cutting pattern down here for the medium, large, extra large size. But since I'm doing the small size, this is the cutting pattern that I'm going to follow. And there's two sections here for the coat. There are going to be two sections for the lining, and the lining is going to reuse some of the same pieces as the coat. So for instance, it tells me that the lining needs 2, 5, 6, 7, 10, and 13. It told me the coat uses 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, 14. So 2 and 10, I think I've got 2 and 10, and I've got 2 and 10 down here. So on this pattern for the coat, the exterior of the coat, part 2 is going to be here, and part 10 is here. And when I make the lining, which is going to be made out of like a satin material, kind of a lining material, here's part 2 and here's part 10. So I'm going to reuse this cutting diagram when I cut that out. On the coat, part 6 here is back up in my parts diagram. Part 6 is the coat upper sleeve. That's this coat upper sleeve here. 6 is used, it's also used on the coat as well as on the lining. But one of the things I notice here is on the coat, it's shaded. And back up in the instructions for the cutting layout, it says that the shaded ones or the pattern sides get printed down. So we're going to see that in a second over here. The difference between these is when you cut them out, you've got basically bigger pieces to make the bigger costume. And number 1 and number 12 on the larger size will fit next to each other, but on the smaller size, you can fit a bigger piece next to number 1. So your fabric is going to be 45 or 48 inches, I guess, by however long. The diagram, the printed package told me to get, I think, 3 yards of all this material. That's this green material I have here. That's sort of a suede. That's what I'm going to use for the jacket. So I have 3 yards of that. What it tells me to do is, this isn't focusing really well. I'm going to see if I can focus a little better. Well, maybe it's focused. Okay, that's the best I can do, it looks like. The jacket, anyway, the cutting diagram basically makes sure that you have enough space to put the pieces together with the fabric that you've got in order to get the parts that you need so that you can then sew it all together. So you want to make sure that you're following the right cutting diagram for the size that you're making. When I've made costumes in the past, I usually have a ton of leftover fabric. I tend to put the pieces pretty close together. I don't want to, if I need more fabric later, I want to have it. So I try to be conservative, and I'm going to leave kind of some big chunks as I'm putting it together here, so that I have leftover pieces in case I need the material later. All right, so a couple of notes on this. So it says here double thickness, and I had to double check this because the double thickness appears to only be a label on this part of the cutting diagram, but that's not correct. Both of these are have the fabric folded over onto itself. You're going to put the right side together, which is the outside of the material, not the inside of the material. So which also, by the way, doesn't matter. At least for this material, this pattern, I'm pretty sure it doesn't matter. Sometimes when you're cutting something out, you're going to fold over the fabric and you're going to make a cut along an edge, and it's going to make a mirror image of that thing. So for instance, if you're making a circle, you might have a half circle in the pattern. The instructions may say to fold it over and then align that half circle on the fold. In this case, I believe it doesn't matter. The reason that it puts the diagrams in this way is so that the pieces fit, not necessarily because of which side is inside or outside. So sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, it doesn't matter which way. I could flip all these pieces over basically, but in this description here, these might not fit if I were to change the orientation of this number 6. So if I flipped it over, it may not fit. That's why it's that way. So the double thickness is telling me to fold it over, and it's just folded over once. I thought it was labeling this one as double thickness, and this one's not labeled as double thickness, but I can see in the pattern that it is folded over. That's just a little bit confusing. There is a fold on this edge. These are both folded over to double thickness, and that's all there is to it, really. Another thing about this, it mentions the selvages. I always have to look this term up because I don't know what it means. I'm not familiar with it. When you buy a fabric off of like a bolt, the big rolled up thing they have at the fabric store, the selvages are these rough edges of the material that it's rolled around that big bolt on. Down here, they cut it at the fabric store with their scissors, so that's a cut edge. This is the selvage edge, if I'm pronouncing that right, and those are going to go together up this way. So that was a scissor cut. This would be a scissor cut, but my fabric goes along much longer. But that's what the diagram is. That's what the instructions are telling you to do there. So I'm first going to put these pieces together in this orientation, and that's what I've already got, and I'm going to show that in a second. And then I'm going to make a separate cut to get 9, 7, and 10. And then once that's done, I'm going to have everything I need. Okay, so what I did, and this isn't the best work environment. In my old house, I would work on just hardwood floors. I don't have a giant cutting table, and that's a thing that I've seen before in some fabric workspaces, and that's really nice. And I would wish that I had it, and I don't have it here. But what I did is I set the fabric out. The instructions say to iron it, and that's a good idea, and I would encourage that, and I've done that in the past, but I didn't do it this time. I think with the suede, I'm going to get away with not needing to iron it. I'd like to not have the pucker on this edge so much, but I'm just going to work with what I got. It's also recommended to pre-shrink and wash your material. I've done that in the past. Again, I'm trying to get away with it with the suede. I don't think that the suede's I don't think it's going to shrink. I hope I am not wrong about that. I don't know this kind of material. Cotton would definitely shrink. Maybe it is cotton. Maybe I'm making a mistake. I guess I'm going to find out later. I've also never washed a costume, so again, maybe non-essential. So once these are placed, following the diagram, what I do is I just take pins all around this thing and I just poke them down in place to get the pattern pinned onto the material. Once that's done, I'm going to take all those pins and I'm going to fold them over properly like that, or double pin them like that. So it's actually holding this thing together. The pins right now are actually sticking through down into my carpet, into my carpet pad. So that's obviously not what I want, but I'm gonna pin those all properly with the way you normally see a pin through fabric. And then I'm gonna have a lot of extra pins as well. If you don't have one of these strawberries, get one of these strawberries and get a whole bunch of pins. I've got another box of pins up here. There's another long box of these pearlized pins. These are really handy, good pins for doing this kind of thing with. The strawberry is good. I use it, and I tend to keep my pins organized by color. Sometimes I want the colors to be used as notations to signify something. Right now I'm just using them to pin the thing down, so I just need a lot of utility pins. Another cool thing about these strawberries, and you might not know this, is this little, I don't know, tomato, whatever this thing is, hanging off the strawberry. I believe this is used for sharpening. It can be used for sharpening a pin. I think there's supposed to be some sand or something that's kind of abrasive in here that you can use to kind of brush up your pins a little bit. I've gone through a lot of these pins. I've been using these for, well, I don't know, 6 years maybe or so of costumes. A lot of these pins have kind of failed. Some of them, you can see this one's kind of losing its the coloration on the little plastic tip. But the pins will last a long time, and it's good to get some good pins and not be struggling to find pins. I prefer these large ball head pins as well. You can just get a cheaper box of plain flathead pins, and I'm sure those will work as well, but I find these to be convenient. Long pins are helpful, I think. You might want some short pins for something, but I like the long pins typically for working with. I find a little bit more flexibility with them, and that's nice. After these are all cut out, I'm going to make sure, so a couple things about the cutting. I'll cut it out according to the right marks, and I made this in a prior video. I marked this with pink highlighter to show me where I need to cut this one for the extra small. I also marked all these dots. So I'll cut it out, and I'll cut out all the darts. The darts are going to be used to align 2 notches someplace else in this pattern. I'm going to have these 2 notches aligned with 2 notches on a piece of material that this is going to sew onto. I've got 1 dart here. That's going to be a clue for an alignment mark on some other piece of pattern, some other piece of material somewhere else as well. So you're going to cut out all those little darts, cut the little notch out of there. Where these circles are, you're going to want to use either a fabric pencil, or I'll usually just leave a pin in there, pinning the 2 pieces of fabric together. For this is the number 1 part of the pattern. I'll usually leave a bunch of pins in here. So there's going to be a pin here for this XS, pin, 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 pin. There's a buttonhole here, pin, pin, pin. There's a lot of those dots that are marked. So that'll help me keep the pieces together, help mark all the things that were on the cutting pattern, and get me in shape for the next phase of the pattern. So after I cut out the main material, the order isn't super important, but I'll cut out the main material. I'm going to cut out the lining, and I'm going to cut out the interfacing, because on my costume, I've got the lining, the exterior for the coat. I've got lining, this sort of satin, as I mentioned, that's going to go inside of it. And then on the back, I have interfacing. Interfacing is going to be a lot of the similar pieces. It looks like the interfacing is going to be most of the like the body of the coat. It doesn't look like there's interfacing on the arms, which is what you'd expect. The arms should be a little bit more flexible and pliable than the body of the coat. And then there's these other pieces, this jabot and wrist rustle. I don't have some of that right now, so I'm going to have to do that later because I'm going to do the wrist ruffle. I'm not going to use the jabot. The jabot's the neck thing, and that's a part for the view A, the Captain Hook part. I don't need that. I just need the wrist ruffle, but I don't have the material to make that. I think that's it for this phase, and I'm going to get to cutting. Oh, but one other thing I'll mention. So these are the scissors I was using for cutting out the pattern, just cutting through this paper. I have fabric shears around here someplace. I'm not sure where they've gone, but I have a good pair of sharp fabric shears. Up here are the other pieces of the pattern that I'm not using right now. These are for there's my interfacing. This purple is the satin interior. That's going to be the lining. And someplace around here, well, I don't know where they are, but I've got my fabric shears. And my fabric shears are what I'm going to use. Oh, here they are. These are Fiskars, I think. Yeah, I've got Fiskars. There are probably better ones than this, but these are fine. I got these from my fabric store, but you're going to want some fabric shears kind of like this. These are probably $20 or $30 pair of scissors, and these are good for this, and I don't use them for anything else. And you definitely need something like this to cut through the material and do a good job of it. Regular scissors would botch it and get all gummed up, and you just wouldn't have a good experience. So get some fabric shears, have some decent pins, and that's about it. There's a lot of planning that was necessary to get ready for all this, obviously. All right, I'll make another video later as I'm continuing to make progress on this. Have a good day, and happy Halloween.